God's been He's been speaking to me. Been spending some time talking about Elijah to me, and you know, there's some things here that really just struck out to me. And one of the things is we know in the book of Acts with the apostles, an event happened where fire came down. The Holy Spirit came down as fire over their heads, and the fire is the power of God. It actually moves things. It changes things. It does things. The manifestation of God's power, where we see people healed, that shows His love to us. That demonstrates Himself to us, and that's what we need to grab onto, because that's what changes our environment. It's the power of God, the fire of God. You can all day long, be without that rhema power of God, and nothing will happen. But when the fire of God falls, things happen. It changes things. And so here's Abraham that is told to line up a sacrifice, and what does God do? He puts him to sleep, and then he just blazes through that sacrifice and burns a trail right in the middle of it, and covenants with Abraham. He covenants with Abraham. Something changes dramatically because of the fire of God. What did Abraham do? He was just obedient, lined up the sacrifice. That's what he did, and then he was put to sleep. But the power of God showed up. The power of God showed up. It was there. And in the book of Kings, the power of God shows up specifically for Elijah. So here's Elijah dealing with these pagan folks and Baal worshipers, and what does God have him do? God has him call all the Baal worshipers together to a central place, okay, to demonstrate His authority to everybody, to demonstrate it. He calls them in. So God doesn't back down from challenges. God invites them in. He invites them forward. He says, come on down and challenge me. And so that's what God does. So God had Elijah call all these folks, these Baal worshipers, and he had them set up their sacrifice. And he said, okay, you go ahead and show me your God's power, and have that God, your God, burn up this sacrifice. Well, they spent all day just doing that, yelling and screaming, cutting themselves and all sorts of stuff. Nothing happened. And then Elijah, under God's direction, he sets up a sacrifice, rebuilds the altar, rebuilds this crumbled down altar. So he's doing that. He's setting up the sacrifice, and he calls upon people to, before he calls upon the Lord, he calls upon people to dump pitchers of water on it. To dump water. Well, okay, what's significant about that? Well, what's significant about that is there's been a drought in Israel for about 3 years. He's calling on people to dump water on this sacrifice. Not only is it an act of faith, it's an act of intense faith towards God that he's doing by having them drop this water on this sacrifice. There it is, this precious water being poured out on this sacrifice that's supposed to burn up. Everybody must think he's crazy at about this point in time, okay? They must think that he's crazy. But what he is Elijah at this point in time is at the end of himself. He has nothing to offer to God, nothing that God can give him, but so he empties out everything that he is on that altar, calls upon the Lord, and it's the Lord that acts. It's the Lord that sends the fire. It's the Lord that makes the movement. And that's one of the things that draws for us the fire of God down. When we're at the end to ourselves, we don't make it happen. We don't make it happen. In fact, what we do is we go exactly in the opposite direction. We pour water on it. We pour water on it because we're showing our faith to the Lord. And so dumped out the water on that sacrifice till it was just soaked, and God's fire came down and burned up that sacrifice. and Elijah dealt with the prophets of Baal, which is good, but it burned up that sacrifice. Nothing that Elijah really could do other than to obey God and do the most counterintuitive thing possible, dump water on the sacrifice. Nothing there that man could offer, but Elijah just offered his obedience.
Yes. Amen.
That's it.
That's good.
That's it. And he turns around, and so there's these two things here that are showing up. God shows up when we're at the end of ourselves. When we don't have anything to have. We have no man-made strategy to make things happen. God shows up and he makes things happen his way. How does he show up? Well, I looked at, if you look at the Old Testament, look at the ways that he showed up. I mean, with the children of Israel, when they were in exile in Egypt, he showed up to them with Moses, and he showed up to them with plagues. Yeah. That's how he showed up. It was plagues that the Egyptians had to endure, and that was their view of God after a long, long time. But you know what? They knew it was God, and they were faithful to God no matter what that looked like. And they were faithful to God up until the point that they were directed to go out into the desert and walk out of Egypt, just following God who they had not really seen. And then God shows up as a cloud during the day and a fire at night to light their way. Then they see God, but it's through that faithfulness of stepping out and walking out that something happened. That something happened.
Amen.
So God's just been, mixing this stuff up with me. But if you look then, and I love Elijah, but if you look back at Elijah, what happened right after this sacrifice, the very next thing that happened is Elijah started praying for rain. Okay, because they had a drought. It was a serious drought. The animals were dying. There wasn't food. It was a serious drought. And when Elijah started praying for rain, this is another place where you call upon God and God responds. Mm-hmm. He started praying for rain, seeing nothing that indicated rain. But he kept on asking his servant to go and check. Go and look. And there's a little dot on the horizon. 7 times. 7 times that person went and looked for Elijah. 7 times he asked him to go and look, and there wasn't anything on the horizon. And then finally, the 7th time, there was a dot on the horizon. And they kept on praying through. Elijah kept on praying through that. And the dot got bigger and bigger and bigger, turned into a cloud and turned into rain. But that is how God responds to us sometimes. We're praying very hard for something to happen. And we can't see anything, but we've got to keep on coming back and checking. We've got to keep on looking. It's our faith being activated. It's us believing in God. So we come back and look and come back and look and come back and look. But don't, just like the kid that says, "Are we there yet?" in the car. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Yeah, well, that's what we need to do. We keep on coming back and believing God. And the rain started falling. And the next thing that Elijah did is he fled because he was afraid. Okay, right. So here the power of God has moved. He has travailed in prayer, and somehow the devil got him afraid. He got afraid, and he ran away. And when he ran away, he went to a place where God met him, and God said, "What are you doing here?" And what are you doing here? God knew what he was doing here. He was running away. And Elijah proceeded to provide the defense, the normal bureaucratic defense. "I've been very zealous for you, Lord Almighty, but I'm the only one, and they want to kill me." It's like I usually think of Tigger and Pooh. I'm the only one. But I'm the only one, and they want to kill me. I've been so zealous, though. Let me defend myself, Lord. I've been so zealous for you. And God has very simple instructions for him. Go back the way you came.
Yeah.
That means all those painful steps that you took running away from God, take them back. Take them back. Go back to the way you came. And not only did he tell him to go back the way you came, he gave him specific direction to anoint king over Aram. Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat from Abdel Maholah, to succeed you as a prophet. So to the nth degree, he asked him to take every step back. To the nth degree, he said not only take up every step back, but by the way, when you get there, you're going to do even more. And by the way, fear has no place in this. Just trust me and do what I'm telling you to say.
Right. Come on.
So he does. And the funniest thing to me, this is just so funny, is he's walking back. This other young aspiring prophet, Elisha, runs after him. So here's Elijah, having really, kind of failed God and kind of running away from things, and he's having to correct things, and I'm sure Elijah's not feeling too good about all this. He's retracing his steps and stuff like that. And here, Elijah shows up and says, "You're a hero. You're the best. I'm here. I want to follow you." And Elijah's saying, "Get away from me. Get away from me, man. What do I have to do with you? I'm trying to fix this." But it's just like God. It's just like God to even in that situation, to send people to follow us, to encourage us to do what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's it. That's all my.
Wonderful.